This video is probably a very bad idea. Anybody who knows this matchup either really loves it or really hates it with a burning passion, with absolutely no in-between, so this comment section is going to be absolutely incredible. Of course, I am on the side of the former, if you could tell by the title, but considering the ways that the matchup could play out by comparison to other matchups, I can't really blame anyone for hating the matchup and thinking it's just really bad. So today I'm going to talk about why I like the matchup, talking about the connections both have, and how a fight between them would actually work and play out. If you enjoy this type of video and want to see more like it, make sure to like, subscribe. I ask that you hear all my points about why I like this matchup before commenting. You know, of course, you can still dislike the matchup, I'm not saying you can't, it's just the frustration of seeing people make up their minds without hearing the other side's argument is quite unparalleled when it comes to this kind of thing. So, if you want to see other videos in this type of format, there is my Denji vs Itadori video you could check out after this video, which will be in the link in the description. And without further ado, let's talk about why I like Springtrap versus Junko Enoshima. To start out, I will talk about the connections that Springtrap and Junko have, since some people don't really know them. We'll start off with the fact that they're both psychotic and extremely intelligent video game serial killers who target children and have a knack for show business. They both kill disguising themselves as animal-themed mascots, as Spring Bonnie and Monokuma. They both have infiltrated an establishment where children are usually found and promptly led to the most horrific events in their world, being the Missing Children incident and the tragedy. They also assumed false identities after these events in a spin-off novel, being Dave Miller and Ryoko. They were both crushed to death by their own creation after a children who they tortured ganged up on them. They lived on through their cult followings, also through their remnants of some kind, as the remnant phenomenon fused with William's soul to create the Spring bodysuit and then create Springtrap. Meanwhile, the remnants of the spear carried Junko's ideals after her death. Finally, they both turned themselves into an AI program within a video game, which the end goal of which was to take over a player's body so that they could return to the real world alive again, or at least in some form. Honestly, their main theme is just that they're just psychotic, crazy serial killers who just refuse to die, and I think that just makes their connections really good as, well, there's not exactly millions of different connections, it's their main themes which really tie together, which I do really like. So the connections are sure, yeah, but what about their fight potential? This is where I have most people who complain about the matchup and the problems that they have with it, especially since Junko's only one physical fight was against the Ultimate Boxer, which to be fair is a good feat, but it happens off screen so we don't even really know how it happened. Another issue I have, or at least I see, is more of a misconception than anything, and is that Springtrap was never seen outside the pizzeria, so it'd be out of character to see him anywhere else. Well, is that Springtrap has canonically been out the pizzeria a fair amount of times between FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, and we literally see him out on the streets, so I really don't see a problem here. However, the issue still remains as to how you could have a fight between these two. Well, let's talk about the fight potential. Before I get started, I just want to make one thing very clear from the start. I've seen a common idea between these two fighting, which would end with Springtrap literally using his supernatural ability to make people pregnant in order to beat Junko, or just make Junko pregnant. And now, if you haven't seen the Five Nights at Freddy's novels, this is going to sound absolutely batshit crazy and some fanfic shit, but unironically, there is a scene where Springtrap gets a man pregnant in the novels. Of course, this is absolutely vile considering Junko's age and also just the concept in general. Now, this problem can be attributed to 99% of Springtrap matchups, seeing that it can happen to anyone even if they're not biologically capable of birthing a child. The concept of Junko versus Springtrap makes the problem much more bad in my opinion. Of course, if this is the reason why you hate the matchup, then I cannot blame you in the slightest. However, there are other ways that they can fight, and I'm here to show that, which makes it much better. And it's also just much more lame by comparison to how they would actually fight, regardless of how gross the stuff is. So let's go talking about how the fight would pan out. To start, Springtrap would find his way to Hope's Peak Academy. Of course, Hope's Peak is barricaded up, so it's maybe a bit weird to say, but considering how Springtrap is, I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. Anyways, his goal would be to reach Junko, who is in the control room, as Junko essentially plays Five Nights at Freddy's within Hope's Peak. She would use her ability to summon Monokumas in specific locations and have them explode on Springtrap and have him walk through it, which would just be metal as hell, along with him having to just fight off Monokumas flying at him. This works because unlike Junko, we see Monokumas fighting people who are just as strong, if not stronger than them. You could also have Springtrap be distracted by the residents of Hope Peak Academy, and then brutally kill them. This not only leads to some awesome gory scenes, but it also shows off character, since Springtrap's weakness is being lured away by the voices of people, which can then be used by Junko to land more crucial hits with the Monokumas. You could also have some wild shit like the spears of Gungnir being used to summon and attack Springtrap and shit like that. If you believe that the Phantom animatronics are connected to a Springtrap, you could have them attack Junko directly through the camera, so Springtrap isn't the only one taking damage throughout the fight. Eventually, Springtrap would reach the control room and tear down the door where Springtrap and Junko would then meet face to face. You can have a brief hand-to-hand fight here, but honestly, it's just not needed. If you have Springtrap win, you can have him slowly walk towards Junko, with the army of Monokumas not being able to do anything, as Junko is filled with fear and despair. At that moment, you can have her when she's about to die, squirm in ecstasy as the despair she is feeling is just that immense. You can then go even further, and I will admit this bit's a bit more fanfiction-y, I'll be honest. You can have Springtrap knock Junko out, similar to how William knocks out someone in the novels and then takes him away later. You then have Junko then in a spring-locked suit, and then suffer a slow, torturous death, where Junko is just spring-locked and bleeds out on the floor. Or alternatively, you could have what happens at the end of Help Wanted 1, where Junko wakes up and has the POV of Freddy Fazbear on stage, implying that her body's been stuffed into the suit as she is forced to perform in front of everybody, with Springtrap in the background laughing and watching on. However, if you have Junko win, you can have a really creative death here. You can have a brief scuffle between Springtrap and Junko to come in, however it be revealed later that all of this was a part of her plan, as suddenly a metal claw comes from behind Springtrap to grab him by the neck and drag him away. Similar to how Leon was dragged away in the first trial of Danganronpa, and then you can have a Springtrap execution. This has endless potential here. You could have Springtrap desperately try to leave a burning pizzeria only for it to all be pointless for him to be burned alive. You can essentially have Ultimate Custom Night where he's attacked by countless animatronics, but my personal favourite, while different, isn't too dissimilar to the latter option here. Springtrap is forced to be the night guard, defending himself from animatronics trying to get into his office. After several close calls, he's forced to run out of the room to try and escape, before eventually almost reaching freedom. However, the door closes. Desperate to escape, he runs off into the room invisible to the animatronics, being the safe room, where he thinks he is safe, before then the ghosts of the dead children he killed appear before him to torture him, giving a slow, excruciating death. While this is almost exactly the same as what happens in FNAF 3, you could go into a lot more detail here. You could have the kids be much more haunting, revenge-filled, and fucking terrifying as Springtrap is killed physically and psychologically, having him being torn limb from limb. And just when it ends, you can show a shot of what's left of his eyes, being filled with the despair swirl as filled when someone is filled with despair in Danganronpa. This is a very unique fight, which honestly cannot be replicated by any other matchup, and lends itself to some really raw and some really cool horror scenes, without it feeling out of character or breaking the pace of the fight. Now, when people say there is no fight potential, they're likely just referring to how they really cannot fight in hand-to-hand combat, which I do agree with, but to say that there is no interaction potential and no fight potential, I just think is incorrect. As to who wins, I honestly don't really know. If you go with the feats exclusively in the games, then Junko should win pretty easily, without much of a contest at all. If you go to the novels, there's some pretty wild shit, such as some island to country busting level feats, and in my Discord server, someone somehow managed to calc out a multi-continental Springtrap feat, so I don't really know anymore. So regardless, with novel feats, Springtrap's probably going to win, and honestly, if I don't think I need to bring up FNAF World, since I think that's pretty self-evident. That said, whoever wins I don't think's a problem with me for this matchup, since either of them have really cool win scenarios. Another scenario I didn't bring up but could be really cool is Alter Ego Junko and Glitchtrap fighting for control over someone's body, which could be very cool, but honestly I'm not entirely sure how you'd fit that into the fight I proposed. Regardless, I hope to have proven that this matchup does have potential and does have good connections, a good fight potential, and I hope I have changed some of your minds.